right, welcome to our first episode of 10 Questions or 10 Minutes here at the Kalmanson Gallery. I'm Desmond Purcell, and I'll be interviewing our September artist, Andrea Barbier. And Andrea, welcome to the Kalmanson Gallery. We're happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Question number one. If you could just introduce yourself, tell us a bit about who you are and how you ended up here at the Kalmanson Gallery.
Okay, I'm Andrea Barbier. I am from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I used to live in Swainsboro, Georgia, and I directed Gallery RFD, co-directed Gallery RFD here for 2 years. And so this is kind of like coming home a little bit for me. I just recently finished my MFA in photography. My whole background is photography, BFA in photography, and MFA in studio art. And so now I'm coming to show the stuff that I've been working on recently.
The stuff. All right. Helping you hang the show earlier, when you're viewing that work, especially in person, you really have to see the show in person. It's such a process-oriented body of work, and you are also intimately connected with that process. So could you, first off, tell us a bit about the process you're using?
It's called mordensage, and it is an alternative photographic process. It was developed in the 1960s by Jean-Pierre Soudra of Lacoste, France, and it was brought to the United States by Craig Stevens, who is a professor at SCAD, and he is the person that taught it to me. And then while I was at SCAD, I had a chance to go and study abroad in Lacoste for a summer, and so I got to meet Jean-Pierre Soudra's wife, and I got to study in the place where the process was developed. But the mordensage, the word means to bleach or to etch, and it is a process of removing surface information from your photographs. You put a silver gelatin print into a chemical bath, and it lifts up the surface, and it allows you to manipulate the emulsion and either redistribute or remove the silver salts underneath it. And I use paintbrushes and water to manipulate the surface, and then lay them flat to dry, and it achieves one-of-a-kind unique results.
Okay, and I have a background in photos, so I understood a lot of what you were saying, but if you don't have a background in photography, maybe just talk briefly about what exactly a silver gelatin print is.
Okay, a silver gelatin print is a darkroom print.
Okay.
So as opposed to shooting everything digital and then printing it digitally, the prints are made in a darkroom from digitally enlarged negatives. I print out my negatives on a printer, on a digital printer,
okay.
And then I go in the darkroom and I contact print them on large format photographic paper, which you develop through your developer in StatBath and Fix, like a traditional black and white photograph.
Well, so it is a merger between new technology and old technology.
It absolutely is.
That's really exciting to see too.
Yeah.
So we move from process to subject. As I walk around the gallery and view the work there are two dominant themes I see interplay in there. One is the repeated images of people, or the figure, I guess is a better way to phrase that. And then also there's oftentimes take place in architectural settings. Architecture seems to play a strong role in your work. Can you talk about the relationship between the two and maybe what you're hoping to do with those two subjects?
Yeah, kind of the way that I break them up is the relationship of self, the relationship of a person in a place, the relationship of two people, and the relationship between many people. And so some of them are, very like solitary and kind of quiet images, and they are a bit more introspective. And then, the ones that involve multiple people are either about, like couples relationships or some kind of protective, like guardian type relationship. Some of them are a little bit more voyeuristic, and so and they do respond to the place that they're in. I am from Baton Rouge. I was born in New Orleans. I went to school in Savannah, and all of these places are very unique in their architecture, and so the imagery has I guess, kind of background images that are inspired by all of that. Most of the stuff isn't actually from the places that I lived. A lot of the background imagery in it is from a trip that I made to Colombia. And it is very reminiscent of the type of architecture that we have in New Orleans or Savannah or even in Baton Rouge. And so when people look at it, they tend to feel like it's familiar but not really be able to place it. And that's also a lot about what the work is trying to do.
Okay, and I'm going to use up one of my questions here, but when you say Colombia, South Carolina?
Colombia, South America.
Colombia, South America. Okay,
Yes.
What part of Colombia were you traveling to, and how did that impact the work?
In Cartagena, and then also in a little town on an island in a river called Mompos.
Okay.
And Cartagena is very much architecturally kind of like Savannah is. But Mompos is just the most intimate little town that I've ever been to. It is an old colonial town. The people are very, very inviting. I didn't speak any Spanish, but I spent a couple days there, and everything just felt very familiar to me, even though I'd never been there before. So I kind of relate that in the work that I make.
Okay.
So,
And you've been working on this body of work for 3 years
Yes.
now, right? As
yeah,
part of
3
your
years.
MFA program.
Yes.
And as the work often will do in an MFA program, as it matures and evolves, and more often than not becomes more complex, some threads become more apparent to you, the artist.
Yes.
Either that's the direct observation or having people comment on the work. What do you feel is the most obvious and relevant thread that surfaced in your work that maybe you weren't aware of consciously?
I think the biggest thing is the dynamic of what is public versus what is private. Because when I was making these kind of initial, secluded figures, going back and looking at it, I realized that it's a lot about what we don't share, with other people. And then as they progressed, they kind of became a little bit more aggressive, and the figures in the photographs actually started looking out instead of just interacting with the other people in the photographs, and that idea of voyeurism came into it, and what people can see about you or what they project and things like that. A lot of the work is about the way that you project your own experiences into it,
Okay.
which I do by removing formal information. But anyways, so I would say that public and private is probably the biggest thing that has arisen that maybe I wasn't initially trying to aim for.
Okay.
So.
And as you're dealing with, not just concept, but also process, there seems to be a give and take when I look at the work between how much control the process has over the work, and then how much input you have with concept put into the work. And it looks like it's a real fine balance between the two. When you're creating the work, how much control do you have with this experimental process, and does that ever interfere with concept?
At first, I didn't have a lot of control. It is a tricky process. As you're working with it, often, things that you don't want to go away. Things that you want to keep are just obliterated. But as I was working with it, I figured out how to manipulate the imagery, create the imagery to do what I want it to do once I put it in the chemical baths. And so I look at the image, the initial starting image, as kind of an underpainting, and then once I submerge it into the chemistry, that for me kind of brings the whole image together. It merges it, and it really makes it become its own unique image. And like I said, I didn't start out with a lot of control, but as the years have gone on, I really do have a lot of control over what's staying. I know ahead of time pretty much what's going to stay and what's going to go. And there are still surprises, which keeps it exciting. But for the most part, I know how it'll end up. So.
I've just been informed we are now officially out of time with 10 minutes or 10 questions.